Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Mr. Hicks Podcast. We're here getting it in once again, time and time again. So, as promised yesterday, we're going to get the college football on today, and we're going to talk about the absolutely epic game that went down last night. Neyland Stadium, SEC action, Alabama versus Tennessee, and I believe they said Tennessee had lost this game to Alabama the last 15 times they have played each other. 15 times, almost as long as you've been alive.
Yeah.
And they don't even play each other every year. So it's like, just think about just knowing that, quite frankly, Alabama is going to come there and clap them cheeks. Like every time, it's like, man.
It's usually not close. We're talking about like 30, 40 point blowouts. It's usually not good.
It's like, man, I mean, you imagine as a fan, just the feeling of like, I'm going to go to this game and we are, if everything goes perfect and Nick Saban has a heart attack and their quarterback gets beat up by his girlfriend, we could keep it close.
Yeah.
It's like if everything goes great for us and everything goes horribly wrong for them, we got a shot.
But this year, they had hope of beating Alabama, which is like, it's like that bully that always comes and beats you up. You know what I'm saying? But this time you got the courage and you go and you beat him up, and it's just a great feeling. You know what I'm saying?
So hopefully they don't do like a Texas and then lose to like Middle Tennessee or something like that. It's like you have the greatest game of your life, and it's like you just know to see I've seen fields get stormed before, but to see a field get stormed when there was 106,000 people in the stands. Remember when they took the goalpost down. This is one way to tell you that Tennessee is not used to winning. See, for good teams, when they expect to win big games, they have goalposts that actually fold down in the middle. They're hydraulically lower, so because when you know that when the crowd comes down, they're going to rip that goalpost down. But if the goalpost is already down, they don't tend to mess with it. Like Tennessee didn't have that. They were like, we don't expect to win any bigger. They'll get one now when you find out what they did.
Yeah.
It was so funny because they couldn't get it out of the stadium the way they wanted to.
So they were just walking it around, just trying to find a way to get it out. It was hilarious.
They literally walked it up the stands. Like they walked it this is just drunkenness and excitement of young people. They walked it all the way up the stadium, like somehow got it out of the stadium, and they got it in the river. So there's a picture of just a bunch of Tennessee fans woo, just screaming and everything. Like, what are you going to say to your kids later on? I was like, Dad, is that you in the river holding up a goalpost? It was like, hey,
you're goddamn right.
You goddamn right. It was the first time we beat Bama in for God knows how long, and I regret nothing. I regret nothing.
Lord knows how we got it out of the stadium.
All right, so let's get into the game a little bit. So turns out that Hendon Hooker is a freaking dude. Joe, what do we got? What do we got on the stats for that game?
So Hendon Hooker, 21 of 30, 385 pass yards, 5 touchdowns, a QBR of 94.
So not all is it though. We just, after watching him a little bit, the hype has been building for Tennessee. They're coming to this game undefeated, and it was so every once in a while we would catch a clip of Hendon Hooker throwing a pass or throwing a deep ball, and bro's got one of the prettiest deep balls I have ever seen. And he's throwing to this dude Tillman, who was just amazing. Their number one, amazing wide receiver, and he's out for this game. So not only are you facing Bama, your number one wide receiver is out. And then, and by the way, you mentioned the 5 touchdowns, and who catches them?
Jalen Hyatt. He had 6 receptions, 270 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 6 receptions, 5 touchdowns. The only ball, he only caught one ball that wasn't a touchdown. He had a big 78-yard bomb. So, I mean, he was just out there killing him.
Right. So those of you who are like, don't act like if you were not a Tennessee fan, you have any idea who Jalen Hyatt is, because nobody else did. Nobody knew who this dude was. No. He's jumping over people, snatching the ball. He's catching, when I say these deep balls are pretty, he's being caught in stride. Hendon Hooker is basically handing you the football from 50 yards away. Yeah. And he's catching these dudes straight up in stride. And it was really just a sight to behold and to watch somebody just have the game of their life like that.
Yeah.
And I was saying, you're an amazing high school football player, of course. So it's your first game, your first start. How many yards did you have?
We're talking about what Haddon Heights?
Yeah.
275 yards, 3 touchdowns.
That was just ridiculous. So what is the feeling when you're like, when everything is just clicking?
Yeah, it's just like, holy shit. you go out there and you're like, oh man, I could really do whatever, and this is gonna work. This is gonna, yeah.
So now when Tillman comes back, like how awesome is that going to be? Because now you're going to have Tillman on one side, Hyatt on the other. There's very few teams in college football that say they have the type of secondary to deal with 2 elite wide receivers.
You know who didn't? Alabama.
Oh,
it was absolutely atrocious. Missed coverages, bust all over the place.
Secondary, the defense was just
like every time you saw a dude catching a pass, there was nobody like in the frame. And we're talking about Nick Saban, Alabama. So it's like, it's really rare that you would see that. And yeah.
So the pain of that, I just want you to remember, Nick Saban is a secondary coach. So like that is his bread and butter. To see like, you got Kool-Aid McKinstry, the disappearance of Eli Ricks. Nobody has seen Eli Ricks. I mean, I assume that he's just injured, but I don't know. At this point, he might be hiding under his girlfriend's bed.
He went off the grid. You know what I'm saying?
No idea. Yeah. So it's like for the defense for either Tennessee is just absolutely amazing, or what's going on with Alabama's defense? Like, dude, first of all, there's also like Kool-Aid McKinstry. You got Toa, linebacker, who, by the way, transferred from Tennessee.
Well, he's actually been really good this season. So.
That's kind of my point. So then you got like Dallas, what's the guy's name? Dallas Turner, linebacker, and then the disappearance of Will Anderson. Anybody has seen Will Anderson, by the way, supposedly he was on the football field last night, but nobody could really find him.
Yeah, got to hang up some wanted posters. It's dead or alive. We need him. You know what I'm saying? Because he has been nowhere this season. I don't know. He was supposed to be Heisman candidate guy.
As a defensive player.
All the hype in the world, and he just hasn't been that. He hasn't really affected the games like you think he would.
Yeah, like how is he supposed to be like one of the best defenders? Some people talked about him as Bryce Young being the best quarterback and offensive player, and then Will Anderson being the best defensive player coming out of the season last year. And it's like, we got to look for this brother. We got to save his life. Yeah. Like whatever it is that he's got going on. Because I just cannot imagine somebody having the kind of fall off that he had, considering the kind of season that he had last year, with people complaining that he did not get invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. I mean, we know a defender is a player, even no matter how well deserving they are, they're not gonna win it. But at least he deserved to be invited. We thought that he had that kind of season, and as did a lot of other people. Yeah. Now, mind you, Bryce Young came back in this game. A lot of people weren't sure whether he was going to play at all, and he had a phenomenal game. So, what were numbers on him?
He looked really good, despite coming back from the shoulder injury. He looked great. 35 for 52, 455 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Ooh. So you can't blame him.
Another guy that looked really good, Jahmyr Gibbs, had 103 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, and 5 receptions for 48 yards in the air.
So you have so this is what I want to speak on Alabama, because I think this is just an interesting point, and it's my show. So so you've got Bryce Young, who is amazing.
Right.
And he was actually, recruited by Alabama. The rest of those great performers on offense, not even some of the not so great ones, they're all transfers. Jahmyr Gibbs is a transfer from Georgia Tech. Jermaine Burton is the wide receiver who also seems to remain anonymous. He wants to remain anonymous, but we still know what his name is.
Yes.
He is absolutely not showing up for Alabama, and this is after transferring from National Championship Georgia, the team that won the national championship. You transfer to the team that you lost to, that you beat. Which I can understand, because as soon as you find out that Stetson Bennett was coming back, like Sunday, it was like Stetson Bennett, I'm coming back for my senior year, and then by Tuesday, Jermaine Burton
was in the transfer. He was actually packed in the bag once he saw the news.
had his backpack, and I believe he was walking to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
And everybody like, I'm good. I'm gonna get there. Well, I'll be like, just pick me up along the way. I'll just want to whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, a tall, lanky black dude running for his life, trying to get away from Stetson Bennett being my quarterback for another season. I mean, it's like you're like, I'm trying to put up some big numbers so that I can go into the first round, and I'm not going to do that. And then what is it? There's Jameson Williams. What's it, who transferred from Ohio State to Alabama the previous year and has an amazing season and gets drafted in the first round. He sees some of that, but like, I'm trying to get some of that noise. Let me feel that. They actually also got a receiver out of Louisville whose name escapes me, but he was an amazingly fast player. So they're thinking themselves that we need Henry Ruggs, we need a Jalen Waddle, and completely innocuous, and to the point that I saw no reason to research and find out what his name was, because even his mother has forgotten. There's just no reason for like, and to watch Alabama's wide receivers fail to perform after what they've been as a team for like the last like 3-4 years.
Yeah,
I mean, like all the great receivers that have come out of that program, and I just feel like for me, I feel like this Bryce Young is just like dragging this team. What do you think?
You could tell based on when they didn't have Bryce Young. When they didn't have Bryce Young and they had Jalen Milroe, it was a struggle the whole game. Not to say that Jalen Milroe is a bad player, but he's not going to put anybody on their back. He's not really that great of a passer. He's a really good runner, but without that, I mean, they're not that. If we're talking about receiving, nobody went over 100 yards this game. Their best receiver was their tight end, who had 6 receptions for 90 yards, which is it's okay. It's not crazy. Like usually you're, from an Alabama receiver, you're thinking of Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy,
Jalen
Waddle, like Amari Cooper, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, those guys, that are game-breaking guys, and you're really just not seeing it from Alabama this year.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, Jahmyr Gibbs is actually leading Alabama in receiving this year.
Yeah.
The running back, he's leading them in rushing and leading them in receiving.
Yeah.
So my big question is, what happened to the player development at a program like Alabama? So it's like you used to have wide receivers, and you used to have a stable of wide receivers, not just so that they lost like Jerry Jeudy and what was the guy? The guy that got out of that Vegas that is in jail right now. Ruggs, and then you still got Waddle coming in the next year. Like, oh, he's going to be amazing. And then when you need to, like you could go ahead and pull another receiver out of the transfer portal. But I'm like, where is the development? Where are the guys that should have been like a Pez dispenser? One comes out and another one just pops back up. Yeah. I mean, look at what Ohio State is doing right now. They're killing it without Jackson Smith and Jigba. Without their number one receiver, they're absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
And but Alabama, I remember they lost to Jai Hall to transfer. They lost Jaleel Billingsley to transfer. Both of those guys end up at Texas. So I don't know, were they counting on those guys? Were they expecting those guys to come up and be the kind of impactful players that Alabama has traditionally had? Now, by the way, both of those guys, those are 4 and 5 star dudes.
Yeah. I think when you get a 5-star like a Jai Hall, you expect them to come in and and be able to play within the first 2 years, obviously, and really dominate the game, be a big part of your offense. Especially when you're hurting for wide receivers, you're like, all right, this guy's gonna step up and be the guy for us, and he wasn't, and then he got in the game and then complained, and then it was just a whole hot mess.
Yeah,
and
dropped a touchdown pass in the national championship game.
Yeah,
Bama fans ain't ever gonna let you forget that.
Yeah,
and then you got to think about how many years Alabama got like the number 1 or number 2 running back in the country, and then when they needed a running back, what did they do? They go in the transfer portal to get Gibbs. Is Gibbs amazing? Absolutely, but just the fact that they had to do it.
I don't think it's because it's not a recruiting problem. Like they got a couple of years ago, the number 1 running back in the nation, Trey Sanders. I don't know if you remember that, out of IMG.
Yep.
And he has done jack squat. He's been second or third string his whole entire time at Bama, and you're just like, what happened?
No, I know he had injury pretty early on going in his sophomore season, and then again, it just never happened. And they also had Kamar Wheaton. They had the number 1 running back in the country, pretty much stole him from Oklahoma. Oklahoma thought he had him in the bag.
And then all of a sudden he's not with the team.
Yeah, he was not with the team. Then he transfers to SMU.
Yeah.
So like from Alabama to SMU. You're figuring like if you're coming from Alabama and you got recruited out of high school from Alabama, you really could go anywhere. And then he transfers to SMU. That's still kind of a head scratcher to me. However, it just goes to show, it's like, and we were talking about this the other day, it was like, guys just aren't going to sit around anymore and wait their turn. They just don't have to. So a program like in Alabama who was able to just reload before, that kind of guy can just transfer and go and start right away at another place and kill it and now they don't have to sit out.
Yeah.
So I think we're starting to see like the effects of the transfer portal. So what do you think about like Alabama's you talk about between the recruiting and the development. What's your take on it?
I think their recruiting is great, but we're not really seeing those players turn into elite players. You could say Bryce Young's an elite player, but did they really develop Bryce Young, or is Bryce Young
awesome,
amazing? Yeah. They got Kool-Aid McKinstry. He was, number one corner in the nation. He's the secondary hasn't been great. It's just
and Ricks was the number one corner in the nation. So when you look at like coming out of high school, they're supposed to be loaded.
Yeah.
And on defensively to give up 52 points to Tennessee, is Tennessee awesome? Yeah, but damn.
Yeah.
Like I'm shocked by this. I'm sure. Another thing I found out, Alabama broke an Alabama team record. And not a good one. They had 17 penalties.
Yeah.
In this game.
Absolutely sloppy. If you saw the muff punt where Nick Saban was absolutely flipping the shit, like it was bad. The dude, the punt returner just let the ball go, and this other idiot, he comes over like, oh, I should get the ball, and rather than trying to jump on it, right, and cover the ball up, he tries to pick it up, and then he gets hit, and then it's Tennessee ball, and boy was he angry. It's just small stupid stuff that you're like, this didn't happen a couple years ago.
Yeah, and sometimes you gotta ask yourself, is Alabama stupid? Like, what happened to they just go dumb? Because I'm seeing the type of things, the kind of lack of just football savvy and intelligence, this lack of focus, and just like the holding penalties, offside penalties, just the type of things that you just didn't see out of an Alabama team. And look, I don't understand why they're keeping this gold off this defensive coordinator. People were out on this dude day one. Why is this dude the defensive coordinator at Alabama? Does he have dirt on Nick Saban? Is he somebody's nephew? What is going on?
Yeah.
And then I think what's happening is the attrition has finally caught up to Alabama. They lose position coaches and coordinators every single year. This year, like last year, was Sarkisian, and you know what they're going to do? They're going to raid your staff. So it's like, oh, I'm going to take your linebacker coach and make him my defensive coordinator. I'm going to take your wide receivers coach and make him my offensive coordinator. So they lost Steve Sarkisian, and they lost Coach Huff, who is now the head coach at Marshall, who jumped up and beat Notre Dame this year.
Yeah.
So by the way, these G5 teams, you cannot just decide that you're going to just roll your helmets out there and not pay attention. Yeah. These teams are coming up and doing the damn thing.
Yeah. So when you're Nick Saban, it's like even if you get great coaches, a team will come over and like, yeah, let me get that. No, let me see that corner coach. Yeah, let me get that too. I'll just take all these while you're at it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you have to remake the staff, and you're talking about players that have been there that probably had 2-3 different defensive coordinators or 2-3 different position coaches while they're there, and it's hard to get development when it's a new system every year, when it's a new playbook, new everything, and it's hard to get that development when it's not just one coach throughout your whole time.
Yeah, I feel like honestly the magic is in the coaching and the lack of attention to detail, the lack of discipline, and the lack of development is shown in the fact that they have to go into the transfer portal. And maybe Nick Saban in his old age, he's just kind of just not for the BS anymore. Like, so guys don't go to class or guys are acting up, because that's what happened with Jai Hall. Not only was he not playing well, he's just kind of a jerk of a human. Yeah. So I was like, at that point, I think he was just like, nah, y'all can go. Him and Billingsley, y'all can go. Yeah. And matter of fact, I don't even think Jai Hall is playing for Texas right now.
I don't know what he's doing. He might just end up being one of those head case dudes that ends up fizzling out of college football. Just because not because of his talent, but just because of his mentality.
So now it's all the talk is going to be Tennessee, Georgia. That Georgia's number 1 in the country right now, and now Tennessee is 3. So you got 2 teams in the SEC. 2 teams in the SEC East are in the top 4 and can make the playoff, and that's and one of them is not Bama. Like 2 SEC teams in the top 5. One of them is not Alabama. Now, mind you, Alabama can still make the Final Four if they make the Final Four, if they win out, and then they beat Georgia in the championship game. But here's the deal. Georgia might lose to Tennessee.
That'll shake everything up. Tennessee will obviously be in, but who do you put in, Georgia or Bama, with both losses to Tennessee? I really don't know.
Yeah, because you're right. At that point, they were both number 1 in the country, and they both lost to Tennessee. And then it's going to be like, okay, so now Tennessee goes, and they're in the SEC championship game.
I guess we're talking about best loss, best strength of schedule. In that case, you would put Georgia, I guess? Because Georgia smacked Oregon in the beginning of the year when they were ranked a top 10 team.
Yeah, up until this point, that Georgia win against Oregon was probably the best win of a top 10 team, because I believe that Oregon was a top 10 team at the time. So it's like, so what would end up happening is, like, so Alabama lost to Tennessee. And if Georgia loses to Tennessee, and then Tennessee goes to the championship game, and then loses to Alabama, okay, well, Alabama is the SEC championship that only losses to the team that they lost to early, and they redeemed themselves. So they get in. Right. Tennessee, their only loss would be to Bama in the SEC championship game. Yeah. So you kind of have to put them in. And then you got Georgia, whose only loss was to the eventual team that makes it to the SEC championship. They're only going to have 1 loss, but they're going to be out.
I think what will happen is the committee, that decides who gets into the playoffs and stuff like that. I think they would, try to shake it up and put some chaos in there, put Tennessee and Georgia, and leave Alabama out, to just because there's not really a lot of variety as far as the top 4 teams usually.
Yeah. So you would have to leave them out if Tennessee makes the championship game and then they beat Alabama. They will have beaten Alabama twice. Alabama will have 2 losses. Yeah. The only losses will be to the number 1 team in the country, because at that point, if they beat Georgia, they would be. But it's still 2 losses. No matter you lost to a great team, that's still going to be 2 losses. So Alabama, it will be 2 teams. And then you would probably still play Georgia, put Georgia in. Yeah. So 2 teams would make the Final Four from the SEC, and one of them would not be Alabama.
Yeah. And then you would probably be looking at Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Michigan. Yeah. In your Final Four, of which I think Michigan would get clapped by a top 4 team, but that's for another.
To any of them.
That's for another show. Yeah.
But what do you think about? We went 20 minutes on one game. Yeah. Really, but honestly, that is how amazing this game was. So, big up to Tennessee. I mean, they've been in the basement for a really long time. Yeah. Good for them. And they go to show you what having a great quarterback will do. I mean, I know that Josh Heupel was probably nobody's first choice to get that job. But good for him.
Yeah, they're the best offense in the nation right now. Tennessee has real hope, and it's looking good for them this season.
I don't know if they really know what to do with it.
Maybe, dark horse national championship team. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm like, poor Tennessee fans, they don't know how to deal with hope.
I'm saying it right now. I think Ohio State's going to win. I think Ohio State's going to win it all this year, just the way they look. But
because honestly, Tennessee did give up 49 points. Yeah. So it's like, and Ohio State also has that type of caliber of players on the outside in the backfield, and they don't have Bryce Young, but they do have C.J. Stroud.
If we're talking about a shootout, give me Ohio State every day. You know what I'm saying?
That game would be unbelievable. And you know what? The college football has been fantastic this year. Yeah. I love what we're saying. They're giving us a lot of content, a lot of things to talk about. Yeah. Love what we're doing. Great show. All right, y'all. Take it easy.